Boris Bochard is first and foremost a professor in climate adaptation. He's also a researcher at the Global Center of Adaptation, gca.org. You can find it there. And he's also a senior consultant at deltares.nl, deltares. Floris will now talk about Climate Cafe. Climate Cafe is a multidisciplinary approach bridging the gap between research, applicability, and societal. Floris Bochard is first and foremost a professor in climate adaptation. He's also a researcher at the Global Center of Adaptation, gca.org. You can find it there. And he's also a senior consultant at deltares.nl, or deltares. Floris will now talk about Climate Cafe. Climate Cafe is a multidisciplinary approach bridging the gap between research, applicability, and societal effects. So with no further ado, I welcome Floris with 2 extra minutes of your time. So please use them freely.
Thanks a lot,
Welcome.
Gustav. Thanks. So, of course, thanks for the opportunity to tell about this research and also the introduction already, where you see Deltares, Hans. I put it on one slide just to give you a bit of feedback why I do have 3 jobs, and that's connected to Climate Cafe, the topic of this short presentation. It's to connect the professional practice, education, and also the research in this case. So, well, I am from the Netherlands, and I have 3 positions, as you know. We live partly under sea level, so if the dikes would break, I would be out of my jobs, and I think Augustenburg will be the first place that I would move to. So I'm going to tell you about an event in Malmo, Climate Cafe in 2019, which is of course with a lot of partners. I show just the logos here because we save some time and we can see some fun pictures about this event. So, but thanks to all the partners, of course, involved. And I see actually a lot of names in this event as well, like Antal and Guri, and Martin's going to talk later, and Helen was involved. So really glad that everybody's here. So just as a short content, 50 minutes, what is a climate cafe? I want to tell you about that. What is the method, but most of all, the results was referred to in a former speech about what do sustainable urban drainage systems actually perform after such a time, because Augustenburg is quite one of the early adapters, so to say. And I'm going to show you where you can find more info. And I think some of the things are already addressed. Let's start with that. Of course, there's when I did my studies in 1998, I already heard about Augustenburg during my studies at the TU Delft. So it was really like an atmosphere, like, ooh, something is happening there. I want to go there, and we accomplished that in the last year. There's a lot of written things in other languages. I'm not sure if the Swedish people are aware of that, but it's really best management practices around the world. There are some Dutch things and Swedish things, of course, that I don't able to read, but I'm really glad that it's translated to English versions, like the book already mentioned, and of course some scientific papers about what I'm will be talking about. So if you want to have more info, there's a lot to say about it. But then again, Climate Cafe, what is it? Well, it's actually a field education concept involving different fields of science and practice for capacity building and climate adaptation. Well, you see some pictures here, so it's really a field of different expertise, but also really field education. You see Helen on the right, who was great to give the speech in the field and interact with a lot of young professionals and stakeholders which were there. And Climate Cafe is basically that you really involve and engage with people instead of just telling them or showing them or bore them with scientific publications that I would write, but really involve them. And partly to involve them is, of course, you give them a presentation, has been done at the Green Roof Institute Many thanks for that, that we were welcome. And we gave the presentations about the history like we're doing now. And the great thing is I found some pictures of 2004 and also 2019. Not much has changed. It still has that function. And I'm really glad we could be there. Of course, Climate Cafe, climate is about climate adaptation. How can we adapt to the changing climate? So it's about heat stress, it's about drought, it's about flood, but also about water quality and how the perception is of different stakeholders during a long period of time. Climate Cafe is international. Basically, we go all over the world, as you can see here. Asia, a lot of fun. Africa, of course, South America, and of course in Europe, because most of the activities are European project bound, so to say. So Malmo is on there. So 2019. There's a lot of information you can find on climatecafe.nl. We go all over the world. Why would you go to Malmo? Well, I already told you about my studies when I heard about Augustenburg. And Friedrich Hegel once said, the only thing that we learn from history that we don't learn from history. And I get a lot of questions doing research about sustainable urban drainage system if they are actually sustainable. And that's a very hard question to answer. But if we go back to the early adapters like Augustenburg, seeing these swales and the green roofs, and I have pictures of 2004 and there are earlier pictures, I like to see if they're still there. Because if those suds are not there, they might not be sustainable, for example. But we want to see about what we learn. How do people interact with these systems, for example? So it's also about the last wise guy that I will quote, Rene, doubt is the origin of wisdom, is to see if they actually work. So we want to go out there and do testing, and most of that is, it's called flood fighting, if you want to have more information about that. It's about full-scale testing, so we flood streets or swales and see if they actually perform. And the great thing is that people will go out and see, why are you flooding this area, and we can have talks with them, as you can see here. So field education is, for me, being a professor in applied science, very important. And Climate Cafe, therefore, is a very important tool. Because this is one picture, connects to the research. We have the data, but it's also very good to see, in this case, a lot of stakeholders watching permeable pavement that actually doesn't infiltrate if you don't do the maintenance. So I can tell them in a report, but we have to show that. So Climate Cafe is international, interdisciplinary, a long table with a lot of information, but this was actually Malmo, and you can see that there were a lot of different nationalities, but also different field of expertise. And also we saw the impact of what do they want to learn, for example, and we incorporated that in the method. That's basically that you find with stakeholders what is of interest to review in Augustenburg, and that's water quality, the hydraulic capacity of swales, for example, heat stress mapping was a big topic, soil quality mapping, and storytelling. So these are workshops connected to sustainable development goals, as you can see here. That was the basis of the method of Climate Cafe in Malmo. And well, we can tell a lot about the methods, but I want to skip this actually and just show you some pictures and tell my story about it. So, and just notice, you're going to get the slides of this. So know that every method is published, open access. So the full scale testing, the Climate Cafe, also Climate Scan. So, and it's all open source. You can find more information about these things. But this is a boring slide. So let's go to the workshops. Storytelling is probably the most fun because we had the chance to interview people, as Helen is being interviewed by Anna, and all the participants as well. And I think on the right there are some inhabitants of Augustenburg telling about their parents working on the implementing of sustainable urban drainage system. And just one result from that, it was very inspiring that they actually know how the water would run. These pictures, you see them pointing out how water would run to the water square and the swale. I was quite impressed by that because this is, of course, a different generation. Then we mapped everything that we could find relating to climate adaptation. In about 2 weeks with Antal Suurman, we had about almost 200 points on climatescan.org, which is quite nice because you can analyze what you find. And this focuses a bit on the Augustenburg part. If you would go there, you will see very different ponds, of course, and the green roofs, not surprisingly, of course. Almost 25% of it was green roof. I think the Green Roof Institute has something to do with that, of course. And then the ponds and the swales, but also some other things like urban farming. And well, it's quite inspirational that it's such a wide variety of things that we can find here. But then, of course, the question is, do they function? Are they sustainable? Well, therefore, we did a workshop 3 with Guri Venvik, the soil quality of MBS. We used XRF to see if heavy metals were bound to the top layer of the swales of the rain gardens, for example. Well, luckily, you can find the results. After more than 20 years, there was not really a buildup, well, in some locations, but not at very high levels. I think Augustenburg is very sustainable, so it doesn't have a lot of leaching materials, for example, and has a great housekeeping. The same you can find from workshop 4, water quality assessment of MBS. We used ROVs, remote open vehicles, basically underwater drones or drones. You can see one on the left top, and we attach sensors and cameras to it, and then you can see what the quality is. And different ponds are being compared. So with this, you can see algae, chlorophyll, for example, where concentrations are higher than on another location. So you can see what, if you prioritize water quality, where you should maybe do something about it to improve the water quality, which was quite okay. And then hydraulic performance, my hobby, flood fighting, flooding things. It was a rainy day actually before, so we didn't have to flood it. And we placed sensors and we calculated how fast the hydraulic capacity was, which was totally fine. It will be infiltrating within 1 day, which is mostly an international standard of how SATs would perform having infiltration. And then the last workshop was heat stress mapping. We attached heat sensors on a bike, and then we bike around, also mapping climate adaptation measures on ClimateScan. But it's quite fun because you can see that in the urban dense area with less green, you would have higher temperatures. And of course, this is an indication. If you want to know more, it's nice. And also, we do that in a lot of other countries. Sometimes it's more challenging, as you can see in Amsterdam, near the canals, but that's another topic. Just the evaluation to round up a bit. We, of course, well, I showed a lot of tools, open access that you can use. Of course, it's very interesting to see if the participants can actually use that in their field to go out to Lund or other segments of the world to see if SATs are sustainable. Well, I can show you the figures, but I think the pictures say a lot in the bottom. There was a lot of fun, there was a lot of engagement, and they strongly agree that they were relevant for their work. So I think that's a very strong point of raising awareness and also capacity building. So now we have these results. What are we going to do with it? Well, Augustenburg is a best management practice. I upscale this as a neighbor typology to neighborhoods in the Netherlands, for example. As you can see in the video, we try to see if it works in Augustenburg with that spatial variation or culture, that we could implement the same sustainable urban drainage systems that work, that we found out, to other places in the world that has the same neighbor typology. Because of course it depends if you're in a center of a city or a different climate. So that's some of the things that we do a lot of publications about. So I'm very happy to be upscaling these results as well, that it doesn't show up only in the Augustenburg in this case. So conclusions, well, I can repeat what I said, but I think I named three old men, wise men, and I think they're totally right with their statements. So I'm happy with that. Of course, I think we learned from history. That's one thing, and we want to spread that knowledge, and that's what we're doing now. So I'm really happy that we got invited to this. The sustainable S in Malmo or Augustenburg makes sense. You can read that in the paper. And I think the most important thing is, of course, that we share this knowledge and solutions around the world for that case. So just naming some of the things you can visit if you want more information. Climate Cafe all around the world, maybe near you. So check it out, and everybody can join, even digital, of course, in this place. If you want to see some more suds, not only in Augustenburg, but maybe go to Copenhagen or Amsterdam, you can find that on climatescan.org. And I really hope you get a community. Like the picture in the middle is a close friend of mine, Roel, living in Enschede in a neighborhood funded in the 1997, so in the same area of Augustenburg, and there's a lot of knowledge exchange about swales on that topic. So more info. I said that. Thank you. So I'm gonna leave you with this. Thank you.